Time to power up. I'm Jennifer Graham, and I'm here with you today to help you learn to be an empowering leader of digital teaching and learning. At the top of this slide, you'll notice that there's a bit.ly address. This will allow you to access the content of this session either later for your own research or when you're collaborating with colleagues around planning and implementation of our digital learning plan. So you'll just need to go to bit.ly and NCBOLD 23 Power Up. Let's get started. The first two slides in this presentation are slides that are going to introduce a welcome or a get to know you or an icebreaker type activity. I have decided to leave these slides in here in case you're looking for an activity that you want to use in professional learning or with students. And so I've left these two slides in here to guide you through what that welcome assignment was, but we're going to skip over it for our purposes in this recorded session. So the purpose of this session is to inform educational leaders about the North Carolina Digital Learning Competencies for Administrators, also known as the ISTE Standards for Education Leaders, and to equip these educational leaders with examples and resources to plan personal implementation of Standard 3.3, which is the EmPOWERing Leader Standard. Now, I'd like to dig a little deeper into a couple aspects of this purpose statement. The first one I want to explain is the North Carolina Digital Learning Competencies for Administrators, and how I said these are also called the ISTE Standards for Education Leaders. In April of 2023, North Carolina adopted new North Carolina Digital Learning Competencies for Administrators, and we decided as a state to make our digital learning competencies for administrators the ISTE Standards for Education Leaders. These are standards that have already been developed, have been tested by educators and education leaders around the world, and we just feel like they represent excellence in this area. So you may hear people referring to these standards in both ways, our digital learning competencies and our ISTE standards, and they are one and the same. The other thing that I wanted to clarify is how I've said this session targets educational leaders. You may be saying, am I the person that this session targets? Well, this session can actually target many different types of educators. You may be a district leader, a curriculum specialist, or the head of a department for your district who is really concerned with implementing district-wide the digital learning competencies. If so, this is the session for you. You may be a school administrator, either a school principal, a school assistant principal, maybe an administrative intern, in which case these standards are directly speaking to your role within a school building. And so this is an excellent session for you to have time to explore these standards. You may be a coach. So you may be an instructional coach or an ITF, and you may find yourself working closely with administrators to really plan what's happening in your school. In that case, this is a perfect session for you. Or you may be a teacher leader. You may find yourself being called into planning sessions or on teams or committees to make school or district-wide decisions, in which case it's really important for you to also understand the digital learning competencies for administrators. So this session is really designed to target the needs of many different audiences within educational leadership in North Carolina. So let's get started. This slide is devoted to information about our North Carolina Digital Learning Plan. Our new North Carolina Digital Learning Plan was adopted formally in August of 2022. And so we are working hard across the state to make sure everyone is familiar with this plan and understands their individual and collective role in implementing it. The graphic that you see on this slide is the graphic that has been chosen by North Carolina to represent our digital learning plan. You'll notice that in the very center of this graphic is the student learning experience. That is what we were all focused on, and that is what this plan is focused on. If you'd like to read the plan in depth, you'll notice that the text on this slide is linked to take you directly to the plan. And when you visit the plan, you'll see that our plan is divided into 5 areas: leadership and vision, human capacity, curriculum instruction and assessment, data privacy and cybersecurity, and technology, infrastructure, and devices. We need to have plans, and we need to be aligning our work in these 5 areas to make sure our digital teaching and learning are exactly where they need to be to support the student learning experience. So I hope you'll take time to really familiarize yourself with this document and to really have conversation with the colleagues that have influence in your role so that you can really breathe life into the digital learning plan for your students and stakeholders. Now, North Carolina is known for its innovative approach to so many things, and we did not want our digital learning plan to be any different. Therefore, the state of North Carolina is the very first state in the United States to partner formally with ISTE. What does this mean for you? Well, North Carolina and ISTE have paired up to provide every educator in North Carolina an ISTE membership. And with that ISTE membership, you have access to instructional resources, articles, blogs, videos, professional learning, exemplars, certification. There are so many ways that you can use your ISTE membership. So this is really an exciting partnership, and I hope you take the time to explore what ISTE can do for you. This slide is really designed to provide you with all of the ISTE resources that you need to understand the different levels of ISTE standards. So at the top, we're going to start with students. So you'll see the North Carolina K-12 Student Standards for Digital Learning linked. We have had these standards in place in North Carolina for several years, and they are really in place to define for us what our students should know and be able to do when it comes to digital learning. All teachers are responsible for implementing these standards while they're teaching our students. The next link you'll see is for the North Carolina Digital Learning Competencies for Teachers. Now remember, when we adopted our new digital learning competencies, we adopted the ISTE standards. So these learning competencies for teachers are also known as the ISTE Standards for Educators. Next, we have the link for North Carolina Digital Learning Competencies for Coaching. And so you'll notice that coaching is used as a verb. And that's because we recognize in North Carolina that many different educators find themselves coaching other educators. And we wanted to make sure that these learning competencies can be a resource, a guide, a tool for everyone in those various capacities that find themselves coaching other educators. Next, we have the link that we will be paying the most attention to in this session, and that's the North Carolina Digital Learning Competencies for Administrators, also known as the ISTE Standards for Education Leaders. Finally, I have linked the ISTE Computational Thinking Competencies, and I really hope you spend some time examining these and considering how you can really integrate these competencies in the classroom activities that students are already engaging in. Now, whenever we have new standards, it's important that we develop the lexicon around them so that we are all talking the same language and can collaborate around these standards. So when it comes to any of the ISTE standards or any of our digital learning competencies, they're set up in the same way. We have a standard. So in this example, you'll see the standard is 3.1, Equity and Citizenship Advocate. And that may not be clear for everybody. And so we further define that standard through a standard statement. So in this case, equity and citizen advocate is when we're talking about leaders using technology to increase equity, inclusion, and digital citizenship practices. But still, that may look different to different people. So we want to further define it. And the way that we further define that is through indicators. And you'll notice that Standard 3.1 has 4 indicators: 3.1a, 3.1b, 3.1c, and 3.1d. And so each of these indicators further defines our standard statement so that we are all working on the same page when it comes to planning and implementing this particular standard. But wait, there's more. ISTE thinks of everything. So within the indicators, you'll notice that some of the text is hyperlinked. It is blue and it has a dotted line below it. Whenever you find a phrase in an indicator that is marked this way, blue with a dotted line under it, if you click on it, it is going to open an unpacking box. So you'll notice I have clicked where it says authentic and engaging learning opportunities, and that opened up an unpacking box where ISTE has clearly defined what they mean by authentic and engaging learning opportunities. Again, this allows us to just all be on the same page when we're planning and implementing our digital teaching and learning standards. I think it's really important in this session for us to dig really deeply into the ISTE Standards for Education Leaders, or our North Carolina Digital Learning Competencies for Administrators. And so we're going to do this through a protocol that is known as a Graffiti GIST. Now, if you're following along in the presentation, then you can simply click on the image on this slide. I've actually already opened up this presentation in Canvas to just save a little time. So I'm going to escape from this slide and go right to my Graffiti GIST presentation, where I'm going to click on present mode. So you may say, hey, you were working in Google Slides. Why did you switch to Canvas all of a sudden? So let me pull back the curtain to quote one of my PD faves, Elena Aguilar, and kind of explain my decision making as a facilitator in this session. I knew that I was going to be doing a separate activity. I was going to be moving away from the general presentation and engaging people in a really in-depth presentation. And so I thought that it would be helpful from an organization standpoint to really pull this piece out and kind of highlight it as very important to the work we're doing. Now, I also knew that this protocol had a fun title, Graffiti GIST, and so I wanted to play off of that and get creative. And so you'll notice that I chose a template within Canva that really lets me play off this idea of graffiti. So welcome to Graffiti GIST, the ISTE Standards for Education Leaders edition. Now, while you are viewing this perhaps in isolation where you can't do this protocol as intended collaboratively, there are still resources in here and food for thought that I think will be helpful for you. I'll walk you through the protocol so you're familiar with how this can be played out with colleagues, but then I'll also tell you when it may be a good idea for you to pause this recording and review some of the included resources. So within this Graffiti GIST protocol, we're going to focus on 2 essential questions. What are the NC Digital Learning Competencies for Administrators, also known as the ISTE Standards for Education Leaders? And then 2, how will they guide North Carolina edu leaders to lead the teachers and students of today and tomorrow? So while we're going to be getting lots of information through this protocol, we always want to circle back to these essential questions and make sure that you feel equipped to answer them by the end of this activity. Step 1 in the Graffiti GIST protocol, I have set for 2 minutes. Now, depending on how you want to use the protocol, you may want to change the time limits. For step 1, I would ask each person at the table to review the ISTE Standards for Education Leaders and one of the other linked resources. I would give the tables an opportunity to discuss the resource choices so that all resources are reviewed by at least one person. So we're setting the stage, giving directions, and allowing table groups to make decisions within their working group. And that would take about 2 minutes. Now, on this slide of the Graffiti Just protocol, this is where the resources that they're going to be exploring live. So at the very top, you'll see the ISTE Standards for Education Leaders are linked there. I would want everybody to take time to review those standards. Since that's what we're really trying to own is the standards. I would want every member of the group to review that resource. Then I've given some choices for other resources. So everyone in the group would want to review the standards and one other resource. Now, I also tried to meet various learning needs. And so you'll see that I have linked in a video. This is an article or a blog. This is an article or a blog. And then this is an actual book that people interested in this topic may wish to secure a copy of. So again, this one may not be available to everybody. I'm going to have a copy with me when I do the live session that someone could review, but I still wanted to list it as an important resource that's connected to this topic. So again, these are the resources that folks will have to choose from in the next step as they move forward through the Graffiti Just protocol. So once they've selected the resources that they'll review, then we move into step 2, and I'm going to provide 8 minutes for step 2. During step 2, participants will read or explore the ISTE Standards for Education Leaders and the additional resource that they selected. While they're reading and exploring, they're going to choose or create one phrase or statement that stands out to them as an aha, or a statement with which they strongly agree, or a statement that provides them with a new perspective. And they're going to graffiti write that phrase or statement on chart paper in the center of the table. So everyone within the group is going to be reading and writing at the same time. And again, they have 8 minutes to do that. In step 3, each person is going to take 1 minute to discuss the unique resource that they explored. They'll share with the group the statement that they wrote on the chart paper and any other important points from their exploration. But it's really important that each person only has 1 minute during this part of the protocol. Everyone else will listen and use the chart paper to free write individual and collective thoughts on the chart paper as you discuss your individual contributions as a group. People can free write as much as they would like to from the discussion. So this is really ensuring that while someone is presenting, everyone else is really being active listeners who are jotting down thoughts that are important from what each person has shared. So by now, the chart paper is getting really messy. Step 4 would take 2 minutes. Based on the small group conversations, the group has to circle the 7 or really the 5 to 7 most important words on their chart paper as a group. So there has to be some consensus reached. 5 to 7 words or phrases that are most important. These words may be found in either the statements that each person wrote or from the free writing. So you're going to decide as a group 5 to 7 words that you're really going to pull out from everything that's been scribbled on the chart paper. Step 5, this section would take 8 minutes. So now, using those 5 to 7 words or phrases, the group is responsible to create a 2 to 3 sentence statement summarizing the learning generated in the center of the poster. Now, here's where we're going to pull in AI. I strongly encourage groups to use ChatGPT or Bard or another AI resource to generate the summary. So by doing that, you would have to give that AI tool some prompts to tell it to write a 2 to 3 sentence statement summary, and you would have to tell them the words or phrases that you want that summary to include. Now, while I am really encouraging you to use AI, it is important that after you receive what the AI has generated, your group is going to evaluate the results to ensure that they accurately reflect your thoughts. So I would expect some revision to whatever statement was generated through AI. That's really where the deep thinking comes in. Step 6, your group will have 5 minutes to add your table statement to the slide deck that's linked here, and you'll read the statements generated by other groups to determine what you notice and what you wonder based on everyone's collective understanding. And that is the Graffiti Gist protocol. So it's one of my favorite protocols, and it really does help you reach some deep learning around a common theme. I'm going to escape now from the Graffiti Gist protocol and go back into our regular presentation. Now, at this point, you may want to pause and you may want to go through the Graffiti Gist protocol individually or with some colleagues. And so if you have chosen to do that so that you have time to explore those resources within the Graffiti Gist, please feel free to do that and then just start playing again when you're ready. Now, this session is designed to dig really deeply into Standard 3.3, which is the EmPOWERing Leader Standard. So let's remember what we've learned about our lexicon. We had the standard, and now we have the standard statement, which is leaders create a culture where teachers and learners are empowered to use technology in innovative ways to enrich teaching and learning. And then it moves into the indicators. And so for this particular leadership standard, there are 5 indicators, and you'll notice that they have unpacked many of the phrases within these indicators. Now, this is just a screenshot on this slide, but if you click on the title, NC Digital Learning Competencies for Administrators, it will open up those standards so that you can really manipulate them, and so that when you click on that blue text with the dotted line under it, it will pop out the unpacking for those phrases. So I encourage you to do that, so that you're really familiar with these competencies for administrators, and in particular with 3.3, the EmPOWERing Leader Standard. So now that you have familiarized yourself with Standard 3.3, I want you to assess yourself as an EduLeader. I want you to review Standard 3.3 through the self-assessment that is linked on this slide to determine in which indicators are your opportunities for growth. So when you click on the link for this slide, it is going to open up a Google form that will allow you to self-assess yourself in each of the indicators for this particular standard. And I have set it up so that you will also be emailed the results that you put into this form. So take a moment, pause this presentation, and self-assess in Standard 3.3. All right. So I hope you really have a personal understanding of Standard 3.3 now, and you've really considered what aspects of the indicators are strengths for you and where your opportunities for growth live. So you've probably all seen Oprah in one of her giveaways where she's saying, you get this and you get this. Well, guess what? Before you know it, you get to go back to school and you get to go back to school and we all get to go back to school. And I want to make sure you feel equipped to go back to school as a leader and as an empowering leader. So I've compiled some resources to help you further lead in this Standard 3.3 as an empowering leader. Now you'll notice that for the live session, I set a 10-minute timer to give them time to explore the resources. Please feel free to use as much time as you need to explore the resources. Let's take a look at what I'm referring to. So if I click on the text on this slide, it is going to start the timer, but then it will take me to create my own copy of this document. That way you'll be able to take your own notes and share it in a way that you would like to share it. So what I did is I created this table where I've taken each of the indicators for standard 3.3 and I've included that indicator in there. And then I've given you a few resources that are aligned to that standard indicator. And then I've left a column for you to jot down ideas as you review those resources. Oh, I can share this in this way, or I can implement this in this way, or this gives me an idea to do this. And so this is really just chock full of resources to help you feel prepared to be an empowered leader of digital teaching and learning when school resumes in August, or at any time that you choose to view this presentation. And so again, this might be a great time if you would like to pause this presentation and give yourself some time to make a copy of this document and to review some of the resources that are linked on here for you. For our purposes in this recorded session, I'm going to keep going. So we've gone through most of the content of this presentation, and so it's always a great time when you've reviewed a lot of new information to collaborate with those around you. So maybe you have someone near you. Maybe you'll be talking with someone on a team tomorrow. But what I'd like you to do is think about the two things that are really spinning in your mind after examining the North Carolina Digital Competencies for Administrators, or after really digging into Standard 3.3. And I want you to think about what you would like to talk to your colleagues around with those two topics. Now, as always, when I'm facilitating a session, as I get to the end of the session, I want to make sure that we've actually done what we set out to do. So the purpose of this session was to inform you about the North Carolina Digital Learning Competencies for Administrators, and there are lots of resources within this presentation to help you grow very comfortable with those competencies. But then I also wanted to equip you with examples and resources so that you can be an empowering leader. And so between the resources provided in the Graffiti gist, the standards themselves, and then the document that I created with additional resources aligned to 3.3, I hope you feel like you have a lot to work with. Now, again, these next few slides are set up to kind of circle back to that welcome, get to know you, icebreaker activity in the beginning. And so you may want to see how I continued along that same theme for some in-person closure activities. So I have asked the participants in the live sessions to share both digitally by clicking on the Jamboard here, and you are welcome to contribute to the Jamboard with your ideas of the information that was most beneficial to you from this session, what can be improved in this session, and any questions that you may have or answers you may have to other participants' questions. And so this is a digital reflection. If you click on this image, it will take you to a feedback Jamboard, and I would love to see your feedback. Then also participants in person were given a physical postcard where they can capture their learning, their anticipated actions, questions to research, and where they can have something tangible to take back and say, oh, that's right, I need to remind myself that I need to share or discuss this information with whomever they may be collaborating with in their job situation. So thank you so much for joining me in this Power Up session. Again, the bit.ly to access this information is bit.ly NCBOLD 23 Power Up. My name is Jennifer Graham, and thanks so much for joining. Go be an empowering leader of digital teaching and learning.